Welcome to day 5 of the 10-day Living Yoga Challenge. I'm excited to have you here this morning. Today we're going to be exploring the 5th and final yama, which is called Aparigraha. And this concept is loosely translated as the idea of non-grasping or of non-greed. So again, let's take a look at some of the ways that this concept might come up for us in our lives and how we can really focus on living this practice off of our mats out in our lives. So the first idea or example that I want to give you in relation to this concept comes up around the idea of jealousy. So we have all experienced jealousy in some form, I'm sure, at different points in our lives. When we have an experience that someone receives something that we didn't, someone has a possession that we don't, they have a quality or a characteristic that we wish we have but we don't, it's very natural for feelings of jealousy to come up. However, in order to practice Aparigraha off of the mat, the first thing that we can do here is to really stop comparison thinking in its tracks. So anytime we feel jealous, it's because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else. So when we notice that that's happening in the moment, how can we kind of stop or disrupt that thought? And then as jealousy comes up as well, can we kind of shift or redirect our thinking in that area? So instead of comparing to another person and feeling like we have a lack or a loss, can we start to have gratitude for the things that we do have in our lives? Or better yet, slightly more challenging would be, can we hold, thoughts or feelings of love or positivity or happiness for this other person that we find ourselves comparing ourselves to? So that's one example. Another example is the idea of possessiveness. So this can have to do with physical things, which we will touch on in a minute, but actually, as I was thinking about this, I really wanted to talk about possessiveness in relation to people, the different people that you have in your life, in your interpersonal relationships. So, sometimes relationships, we don't want those dynamics to change throughout life. We certainly don't want relationships to end sometimes. And so therefore, we're constantly trying to control things in our relationships. And I think, it is greedy in a way because certain people give us things in our life that we like, that make us happy. And so we want to make sure that we're going to continue to be getting those things from those people as long as we can. And I think oftentimes when we do find ourselves grasping onto relationships, that can lead to sometimes manipulative behavior. So we are saying or doing things to manipulate certain situations to make sure that we continue to get our needs met from different relationships in our lives. And actually an example that some of us might be able to relate to, I think, could be online dating apps. So we've all been on there where we felt like we're there to look for a relationship and really connect with someone, and then as it turns out, someone was chatting with us every time they were bored because it was nice to have someone to talk to, but then they really had no intention of following through with anything serious. Maybe you've done that, maybe you've been on the receiving end of that. Again, it's just one small example though of how we can see this idea of where possessiveness and manipulation can sometimes play out in relationship dynamics, and working on the practice of Aparigraha, making sure that we are kind of letting go of control in relationships and allowing those dynamics to change and flow in the best interest of all people involved. Coming back to this idea in terms of physical possessions, making sure that we are not over-identifying with physical things, starting to practice some detachment from the objects in our lives, from the things that we own. As long as we have our basic needs met, that's really all we could ask for, because everything else, love, fulfillment, satisfaction, all of that comes from inside here. So just making sure that, of course, if we have possessions, we should honor them, we should take care of them, but making sure that we don't make possessions or objects or physical things a focal point. We don't feel an over connection or identification with them. Another example is acceptance. So when we think of greediness or grasping, a lot of us have a very certain way that we want things to go in our lives. As humans, we're definitely greedy for things that are pleasurable, experiences that make us happy and that lift us up. So, we we're always trying to direct everything in our lives so that we can continue to have more and more experiences just like that. But we know that isn't a true representation of life or of what it means to be human. So part of practicing non-grasping or non-greed in that situation could be starting to relinquish control over the direction of events in your life, and just being a little bit more open to the flow of what life or what the universe, brings to you. And really starting to practice this idea of acceptance of what is. Just whatever is going on in your life at any given moment, can you accept that? Doesn't mean that we won't work to change or to do better, to learn, to grow, etc. But we really can't do any of those things without first accepting things the way that they are. And the last example that I wanted to share with you of how we can live Aparigraha off of the mat is actually from a website called yogastand.com. And as I was reading some things on their website, I really loved this example that they gave of this particular practice, and so I wanted to share it with you. So they talk about non-grasping in relation to emotional baggage, which I thought was super interesting. Basically, it's the idea that a lot of times as humans, we are very attached to the challenges that we've had in our lives, attached to suffering or loss or victimization or heartbreak, etc. Very attached to the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives. And so they kind of pose this question, what would happen if we stopped clinging to these experiences? And, I love that idea. I think at the same time, it's important to say, we never want to deny any of the experiences that we've lived. We never want to, forget what's happened to us. It's important to process and honor all feelings that come up around all different events in our lives. But, as we work through and process those things, we come to a place of more acceptance. Can we also stop clinging so tightly to those stories in order to make room and space for new things to come into our lives and to continue moving forward on our path? So I just wanted to share that as well, because I love that idea that they put on their website. And if you want to go check it out, again, it's yogastand.com for that one. So those are just a few examples of a myriad of ways that we can focus on this idea of non-grasping, non-greed, non-possessiveness in some different areas throughout our lives. And today's Live Your Yoga Off the Mat challenge is a journal prompt, which is twofold. The first is we're going to talk about what circumstances or experiences in your life right now at this moment are you having a hard time accepting? And then as you, jot those things down, also then maybe do some reflection on what does that show you that you're really trying to hold on to grasp onto in your life. Second journaling prompt is going to be about that last idea I shared about clinging to emotional baggage or stories that you tell yourself. So, what would it look like if you were to practice Aparigraha in relation to those things? So again, there's going to be more information in today's email about both of those journal prompts, but that's the general gist of where we're going. So thanks guys for being here. I hope you have a great day.